All right. Welcome to week 16. 16. Really. I mean, let that sink in for a minute. We're at week 16, and really this class doesn't have any content in week 18. So next week is our last week of content. Now, I talked about the end of the semester and all that back at week 15. So again, if you have any questions, please reach out. It's very important to understand how the course ends, what's required, late points, and all that. So let's actually get into what we're going to do for week 16. We're going to finish up the AQI, which I think has been in my both what I think you need to walk away with, which is some exposure to asynchronous code. And seeing it in a real example, and what we're going to do in attendance is actually have you consider, not that you're going to have to create anything, but consider now that you have a better idea when somebody says, what is an API and how do you use the data from it? You could now consider, like, how might you implement something? Because the thing you've built with your decision app is a good start on possibly a portfolio project for you to share, and adding some kind of additional API in there would be great. Okay. So we finish this up, we finish and do the refresh button at the end. So, and then you'll have a code challenge. And then the last item, as I already previewed, is your last step of the decision app. Okay. And no surprise here, shouldn't be. It is form validation. Okay. So I have mine up for what this looks like. So if I just do a default submission, I get all of the error messages. And if I do put in content into one, right, then it will then remove that. Okay, so handling the error, right, handling the clearing, cleaning up the UI, in this case when it is correct. And then ultimately, now I think I did use day. Nice. Pain level. Boom. Okay. So there you go. So that's what you're going to do this week. And when I had you plan this back a couple weeks ago, you needed a minimum of 3 of the inputs that you will do custom form validation for. Now, the way I've written it up, again, this is the way we've been seeing it. If you had anything from week 5, make sure, or step 5, make sure you fix that right before you set it up. And then here are the instructions, right? So you set up your folder, you prepare your HTML, remembering back how we did this before, making sure you're implementing the no validate, right? Attribute on the form. Okay, remove any of your constraints that were there because you want to be able to handle this, at least be able how to have me and us when we get to week 17, because we'll share out actually be able to see your custom validation and then those error containers, right? We did these spans. You could do divs if you want to. So in this case, do a commit, but just do a test to make sure, right, your app does submit without any required on there. And that remember, why do we add the no validate, right? Is to allow us to write it so it doesn't, if any is in there, but I'm having you remove it. And then implement your validation logic. This is the point of what we're doing, and follow the same pattern we saw in our carbon footprint. This is why we see that, to give you a pattern for, writing the validation checks, doing the form logic before you try a create or an update, applying the rules, displaying the errors, and clearing them. So then you do that. And then handling that error state when it is there. Okay, so I'm doing this in attendance just to have you not have to watch another video, because to me this one should be pretty straightforward as far as what you need to do, because we've gone, and the only thing is it was a couple weeks back, so you'll get to go look at that. Okay, now let's actually talk about attendance, because now that we've gone over, right, how much time is left, I looked at the decision app. I want to actually have you do some conceptualizing an API integration into your decision app. No code required. So really this is just a step to have you consider it, because if you do want to possibly move forward, it's a good time to do it. The sooner from the time you've experienced how to set it up. So first, part one, just research. Now, there are a lot of APIs out there. There's some free for sure. I mean, Open Weather Map was one. There was a ton of other API data that was available to us on the free tier. And again, not that you necessarily have to have a free tier. It's just that all you're doing is thinking about, listen, for my app, what would make sense? Like if I think about my app here, one of the things I might do rather than to have the user select what's the outside temperature, actually would, because I actually can get the outside temperature, right? So, and I might have a button here that instead of them selecting, I would say evaluate the current outside weather in my location. So that might be one of the ways I would think about, what could I use? And again, Open Weather Map would give me that. So first research, there's a ton of them out there. So just first consider right here, because you're considering this as a conceptual process, not as a coding process. Okay. So then provide a link, right? So research and select a public API that will provide value or interesting data to your app. I showed you the example here. Provide a direct link to the documentation. Then write a brief explanation of what data that API would provide and why it would make sense to make your application more useful, accurate, and engaging to the user. So actually think about this, right? We've done it for the carbon footprint because that made sense. Air quality index, carbon footprint definitely made sense. So that's worth 30 points, and that will just be, posting. And then the part two of this is also in the reply, but since we're not coding, your goal is to describe how the data would change the app. So I kind of had you consider it up here, but now I actually want you to write how would the UI need to be updated to display the information? How would it change? Now, in this case, how would it change? Because you could consider that when you're putting together your, maybe again, I showed you an example of mine. There are many you could think of. You can use AI as a brainstorming partner. This is one of the great things. Like you might give it, hey, here's my decision logic, or either actual JavaScript or a description, and say I'm considering adding an API. Where would it make sense? Those are great uses in my experience of using AI. So you can either, and now that you have an idea, you can either provide a written or a visual deliverable, right? There are definitely ways out there. You could even just take a print screen and modify it there. Now, if you wanted to, right? So if you wanted to, or, right, there are definitely apps out there. Figma is one. You could also just search for, right? And these are often called wireframes. Again, this you could, but if not, right, then just write how, what your visual, like how it would change. Now, if you are going to do an image, make sure you load it up to the public repo and embed it in the post. I don't want these attached. And we've done that in the past. So if you need help, reach out. So this is worth 50 points, and then 20 points for engaging with the peer about, their proposed concepts. Go beyond just a great job, right? And point out potential logic hurdles in their plan or suggest an alternative way they could use the API you selected, whatever. Just make it a interactive thing. Okay, so that's it for week 16. Please reach out if you want to discuss. I look forward to. Matter of fact, I think my plan, because I'm actually doing this at the end of week 14. I think I'm actually going to go ahead and try to get 17 out by sometime next week, so it's done and out there. Okay. All right. Have a great one, and I'll talk to you later.